BMI sucks. Many people cringe when they hear the term BMI, but it's just an acronym that stands for Body Mass Index. Well, what if your access to medical care depended upon your BMI? What if you had a life-threatening illness and your doctor wanted to admit you to the hospital, but your insurance company said no, because your BMI was not low enough? Well, this happens far too often for individuals suffering from mental illness, particularly anorexia and bulimia. So last year, I was contacted by a healthcare provider who had been fighting for the rights of her patients who were being denied care because their BMIs were considered normal, not below the threshold of a BMI of 15. Or in some cases, they were considered obese. I could hear the desperation in her voice, knowing that a simple acronym, BMI, could be a matter of life and death, particularly for females between the ages of 15 and 24, who were being denied care and who were also 12 times more likely to die from an eating disorder than anything else. Imagine if this were your daughter, your sister, or your friend, denied care because of her BMI. At my height of 5 feet 4 inches tall, I'd have to go from 100 pounds, a BMI of 17.5, down to 85 pounds in order to receive the life-saving care that I would need if I were a person suffering from anorexia. This is just one example of why we need a new method for measuring body composition. In actuality, BMI is weight relative to height that is often used as a proxy for obesity. Scientists and clinicians use BMI as a way to assess disease risk. As we can see, we can have two individuals with the exact same BMI, but vastly different levels of body fatness. And you might be asking, so what? Well, we know that individuals with proportionately less body fat tend to have better health outcomes. But if we only use BMI, we may overestimate their obesity risk. There has to be a better way. So we wanted to know, could we replace this pesky BMI? Back in the 1930s, scientists attempted to use photographs to measure body composition using elements of map-making and multiple film cameras to measure body volume, which along with weight could be used to determine body fatness. But their efforts were limited by the lack of technology. We also know that individuals can be trained to accurately estimate body composition by observing individuals of different shapes and sizes compared to a gold standard. So my colleagues and I at the University of Alabama at Birmingham wanted to know if we could combine these elements to develop an image capture process and analysis algorithm for the accurate prediction of body fatness in humans. So for our first study, we developed our study protocol that included picture-taking procedures, lighting, study clothing, and camera position. Then we decided on the best method to compare our results to, the DEXA body scan, where a person lies on a scanning table and an X-ray moves from head to toe in about 6 minutes and separates the body into estimates of bone, muscle, and fat. Although the DEXA scan is quite accurate, it's not particularly portable, and it's also quite expensive. Then, using 2 simple digital photographs, we developed a 3D model of the body, which allowed us to produce body volume in pixels. We then coupled that information with the visual cues of a person's body shape to give us more information on body fatness. All of this was done automatically by a computer, and the combination of these elements allowed us to build an algorithm for the accurate prediction of body fat. So how do our results compare to that of BMI? Well, with the pictures from hundreds of volunteers, our estimate of body fatness from photographs were significantly better than the pesky BMI. Advances in technology have allowed us to create an easy, portable, relatively inexpensive method for measuring body composition that could be used in clinical settings as well as large field studies to better understand the true health risk associated with obesity. Imagine something as simple as 2 pictures taken with even a cell phone camera that could change the lives of millions through improvements in healthcare access and outcomes. This is what we are creating. So what does this mean for those suffering from anorexia or bulimia? It means a chance for them to get well by gaining access to the medical care they so desperately need. Doesn't your daughter, your sister, or your friend deserve a chance? Thank you.
When I first appeared on stage, what was your perception of me? Lazy, disgusting, perhaps depressed, unmotivated, unhealthy. Based on my appearance, it's usually assumed that I'm lazy and unhealthy, that my weight and my condition in life are self-inflicted. That's not true, but often I don't get a second chance to make a first impression. Now, those stereotypical perceptions that pop in people's minds when they see someone affected by obesity, that's weight bias. And while a stranger's opinion of me, like the woman in the grocery store who once made fun of my cankles, might hurt my feelings. But weight bias that I've experienced in healthcare has hurt me physically. When doctors and nurses have the perception that I'm lazy and unmotivated and non-compliant, that influences the care they provide and then has a negative impact on my health. Now, the Obesity Action Coalition, along with the Rudd Center for Food Policy and Obesity, note that while there has been an increase in attention to obesity, little has been done to end the bias that people affected by obesity experience in their everyday lives. And that bias extends from the workplace to education to the healthcare system. Now, perhaps you're wondering, how is my health? Metabolically speaking, I'm actually pretty healthy. I don't have diabetes, I don't have sleep apnea, and I don't have high blood pressure. So then, why am I so fat? It's assumed obesity is a self-inflicted condition due to poor lifestyle habits. I was actually born to be fat. My excess weight is caused by 2 conditions. The first one is lipedema. Lipedema is the abnormal accumulation of adipose tissue, fat. And this adipose tissue accumulates in the legs, hips, thighs, sometimes upper arms. It's a congenital condition that actually affects 11% of women, but it's usually mistaken for obesity and goes undiagnosed. Lipedema occurs in stages, and the advanced stages including lymphedema. Basically, the lipedema fat begins to crush the lymphatic system. Now, lymphedema is the abnormal accumulation of lymph fluid. Signs of lipedema are actually evident in pictures of me as a child. Yet I wasn't diagnosed until I was in my 20s, and by that time my weight had soared to over 500 pounds. Had I been diagnosed at an earlier age, I could have gotten treatment sooner. Had my doctors not been engaging in weight bias my entire childhood, I might be telling a very different story today, or I might not be here at all. Obesity is defined as a body mass index greater than 30. And despite my obesity being due to lipedema and lymphedema, I am and will forever be categorized as having obesity. Now, before I go any further, there's a lot of debate about whether or not obesity is a disease or due to poor lifestyle choices. Whether or not, I could give a whole speech on that, but there are facts that are not debatable and that impact everyone. Obesity is an epidemic that affects 1/3 of American adults. Obesity accounts for 21% of overall US healthcare expenditures. Businesses lose $4.3 billion every year in obesity-related absenteeism. And despite all the money being spent fighting the war on obesity, obesity rates continue to rise. So why is this happening? I believe it's in part due to the fact that society and healthcare providers are blinded by bias. Instead of judging us, help us. The focus needs to be on the individual patient, not awareness. We know we're fat. We've been told we're fat our entire lives. Do something to help us improve our health. 15 years ago, April, the year 2000, I went to the doctor seeking help for my legs. As you can see, they were abnormally large and they leaked lymph fluid. I was scared. I nearly lost my mobility and was housebound, almost housebound. The doctor told me the problem was just my weight. She knew the problem was just my weight, yet she didn't know how much I weighed. The scale in her office didn't have a high enough capacity to weigh me. According to the Rudd Center, only 1 in 11 physician offices have a scale with a capacity beyond 300 pounds. Imagine stepping onto the scale and hearing that clank and watching the nurse slide the weights all the way over and nothing happens. Imagine how frustrating it's to be told to lose weight and not having a starting point to monitor or gauge any progress. I so desperately wanted to know my weight, I went to a junkyard to weigh myself. Now, in one of the richest countries in the world, a country that spends nearly $3 trillion on healthcare, and I had to resort to a junkyard to get vital medical information. That's weight bias. And it's not just a lack of scales. There's also a lack of seating and larger gowns and equipment. I often find that doctors' offices can't properly take my blood pressure. Either they don't have a large cuff or the staff aren't trained to take a manual reading on my arms. Weight and blood pressure are two basic yet very important vital signs, yet I go without having them documented or monitored or documented properly. Now, on a positive note, I have noticed larger seating in waiting rooms, only to find this in the exam room. So I can be waiting comfortably, but I can't be examined properly. And I don't know about you, but I can't be the only one who has trouble getting up on these things. I'm not just overweight, I'm also under tall. And when I speak up about this, because that impacts, if I've had tests canceled because I weighed too much for the equipment. Okay, if I can't have the test, then how's my doctor going to make a diagnosis? And so I'm concerned. And I speak up and I'm told I shouldn't expect to be accommodated for my poor lifestyle choices. Well, that's weight bias. I'm told that doctors and hospitals shouldn't have to buy expensive equipment for just a few patients. That's weight bias. And since when is 1/3 of American adults a few patients? And just so you know, I can buy a scale on Amazon for $50 with a high enough weight capacity to weigh myself. Yet doctors and healthcare providers use the expensive burden of treating obesity to defend their inadequate care. Look, that's weight bias. I'm not asking to be able to ride a roller coaster at a theme park. I'm trying to save my life. Now, so to go back, I was on this journey. I was trying to get healthy. I was going to different doctor's appointments. No one was really helping me. I just kept being told to lose weight. No one was really giving me, they hand me a 1,200 calorie diet. As if I've never tried a diet before. Then all of a sudden the bills start coming in. And I notice the insurance company is denying payment for my appointments. So I call them and I'm told, we don't cover cosmetic care. And I'm like, I don't know what you think I had done, but there's nothing cosmetic about this. Oh, no, man, we don't cover the treatment of obesity. Okay. Even when the appointments had nothing to do with weight loss, they were denied simply because the diagnosis code of obesity was attached to the claim. And again, I'm always going to have that diagnosis code. Now, the Affordable Care Act actually has a mandate to include the screening of and counseling for obesity. But simply put, that means your doctor has to weigh you, document your BMI, and tell you to lose weight. There's no mandate that insurance companies actually have to cover the cost of treatment of obesity. And while there's not supposed to be any denial of coverage for pre-existing conditions, insurers are still permitted to exclude coverage for obesity from their policies. How does that help decrease obesity rates? So, again, to go back, I'm on this journey trying to get healthy. I finally had to advocate for myself, and due to the size of my legs, regular exercise wasn't happening. So I asked my doctor to send me to physical therapy, and she agreed to. And I go to physical therapy, and I start working out in the water. And actually, during this time also, I saw another doctor who, when that doctor instantly saw my legs, asked me what they were doing for my lymphedema. And I'd never heard the word before. It took a doctor looking at me to know what I had. So finally, I'm working out in the water. I'm actually getting compression treatment. I have motivation. I have hope. Years later, the water aerobics is like a treatment and exercise both. And it's what I did, like my primary form of exercise for 10 years. So in 2011, I was really scared because one night after water aerobics, I started getting short of breath. It was very unusual. And it lingered for a few days. And so I went to my doctor, a new doctor at the time, great doctor, and she was concerned also. So she sent me to a pulmonologist. Now the pulmonologist walks in the room and greets me by saying, "Oh, I know why you're short of breath. You weigh over 300 pounds. I don't even need to examine you." That's weight bias. And while he did run a few tests, none of which were the tests my doctor wanted him to run, he concluded I was allergic to grass and dogs. There were no grass or dogs at the pool that evening, I'm quite sure. But since all my other tests were normal, he said, just keep on losing weight. Rock on, doctor. That would be easier said than done if my main form of exercises wasn't causing me to be abnormally short of breath. And while this might sound shocking, it's not. It happens all the time. Research shows that the weight bias in healthcare extends from physicians to nurses to even medical students. No offense. No. When doctors were surveyed, they indicated the higher the patient's BMI, the less desire they had to treat them. When nurses were surveyed, 31% indicated they'd prefer not to treat patients affected by obesity, and 24% said they were actually repulsed by such patients. Repulsed. I'm repulsed by the fact that more than 50% of nurses admit to engaging in weight bias. So it's not a surprise that on the flip side, patients affected by obesity are less likely to get preventative care or cancer screenings and are more likely to cancel appointments or delay treatment. I mean, no wonder. It's embarrassing not to be able to get weighed or get up on an exam table. It's frustrating to have insurance deny coverage for your health care. And it's infuriating to have every splinter and stuffy nose blamed on just your weight. But delaying care only worsens an already poor state of health. So once we as patients get to the point of seeking care, we need a higher level of care. And let me tell you, if weight bias is preventing us from getting basic care like our blood pressure and weight taken, we're not going to get a higher level of care when needed. And then the cycle just continues. We've been ignored by healthcare while taking the blame for being a public health and economic burden. I was born to be fat, but despite the reason for obesity, all patients deserve access to health care and to have that care delivered in a respectful and dignified manner. So whether you're a healthcare professional, an employer, or a friend or family member of someone affected by obesity, I hope you have a better perspective of how we're viewed within the medical community and the additional challenges we face when trying to access health care. Help me end weight bias. End the bias and treat the patient. Thank you.